Flame is very, very steady. Extremely steady. It looks like a signal image. It's so steady.
The astronauts aboard the shuttle Columbia have been burning things. No, they're not pyrotechnics. It's just one of the many experiments they're conducting up in space. Welcome back. Today we're bringing you a space odyssey. NASA's Donna Shirley's with us from Pathfinder headquarters in Pasadena, California. She's the mastermind behind the Mars Pathfinder probe project. And CNN's resident expert on the space program, John Holloman, joins us too to tell us about the latest in store for the astronauts aboard the Space Shuttle Columbia. We'll talk more about the Pathfinder probe in just a couple of minutes, John. Let's just get on to the issue of the astronauts.
All right. Well, they have been up for several days now. All the equipment on board Shuttle Columbia is working much better than the equipment on Russian space station Mir right now. The astronauts are into their regular routine, and the fact that they have time to talk to us today is a sign that things are going so well. Actually, over my shoulder, I can see a live TV picture coming down from the shuttle. I'm not exactly sure which module they're in right now, but we'll talk to them and find that out. We're going to get to talk to the commander, Jim Halsell, who drove this thing into space a few days back, Susan Still, who is the pilot of the shuttle, and she is the miracle woman of this mission. Because this is a reflight of a previous shuttle mission, Susan Still has gotten to be a shuttle pilot twice in a row within 4 months. It is unique for a woman. It's unique for anybody to have done that, quite frankly. And since she has flown it up a couple of times, she is now qualified to become a commander and might be the youngest shuttle commander in history if they decide to let her sit in the left chair on the next mission. Also, astronaut Don Thomas is a mission specialist. He is up there doing a lot of the experiments back in the space lab. And as you say, they're testing fire in space to see what they could do to put out a fire if it happened on the International Space Station. You know, we've been talking for months about that horrible fire on Mir that the astronaut and cosmonauts were able to get under control, but that fire burned for 15 minutes, and it was shooting hot pieces of metal throughout the spaceship. So these astronauts are going to learn how to do things to control that, and also make fuels that burn on Earth more efficiently. So and that's just one little bit. There are 19 experiments. That's one of them.
This is the nearest thing they've got to July the 4th, American Independence Day fireworks up there, I guess. Are these dangerous experiments for them?
Probably not. They are in a very controlled environment. They work inside a container. So they put their hands inside gloves inside these containers. By the way, Riz, I may have to drop off. I've got to drop out to talk to the astronauts before we go on. They are saying things in my ear that I'll have to say to them to get the official communication linked. Our viewers have never gotten to see that before,
No,
so
right.
you're going to get to hear a little NASA speak here for a moment.
Well, let's get back to Donna Shirley then, who's joining us from Pasadena, California. Donna, is there anything in particular that that you'd like to ask the space shuttle astronauts, and how could they possibly help a program such as yours with their experiments?
Well, I'd like to ask them if they'd like to go to Mars, because we're trying.
CNN. How do you hear me?
Okay,
we're trying to prepare the way.
All right. With John Holloman, we'll get that chance to ask the astronauts about that. I think John was trying to establish contact with them there.
We got him.
We got him. Let's go ahead. Let's get talking to them.
Okay. Jim Halsell, John Holloman at CNN, along with Riz Khan at CNN International. We've got a huge audience for you guys today, all over the world, in about 210 countries are looking in. They have emailed us some questions. Some people have called in on the phone with questions. The first question, though, I'd like to ask you is from Donna Shirley, who's the manager of NASA's Mars Pathfinder project. She's joining us here. She wants to know if all of you would like to go to Mars if you got the opportunity. How about it?
I'll pass the mic around, but speaking for myself, I'll sign up for the program any day they pass that sign-up sheet around.
It can't be that bad up there if they want to go that far.
Yes, I'll go too. As a young boy, I always wanted to have a chance to go to the moon, and to have a potential opportunity to go to Mars would be even a quantum leap above that, so I'd go in a second. Send me.
How about it, Roger? Last man in line up there.
What else can I say, eh?
Well, if the shuttle could make it, you probably would get there without a lot of trouble. One thing you can't do, and one thing that a lot of our viewers are calling in and wanting to know about, you can't get to the Russian space station Mir. A couple of days ago, you were about 60 miles away. You were able to look at them. Tomorrow, about probably 20 hours from now, you'll get 75 miles away from Mir. Riz, we had a question from a viewer in Germany about this.
That's right, yes. If you could put that to them, please.
You're not far from the damaged space station. It must be very bad feeling that you all are not able to help them. Is there any way, and let me give this to Jim Hulsell, is there any way you could help them if the problems on Mir got worse?
Actually, from our given orbit, we cannot get to the Mir. It's at a higher inclination orbit that we simply don't have the fuel to reach at this point. We did have the opportunity, as you mentioned, to see Mir a few days ago, and actually I did not, but Susan did. So let me pass it off to her and let you hear from her.
Yeah, actually Don and I saw Mir the other night, and it was spectacular. Mir was the brightest thing in the sky, and she just passed almost directly overhead of us, and almost close enough to reach out and touch them. And yes, of course, we wish we could go help them. Unfortunately, Columbia can't get to that inclination.
All right, here's a viewer question from Robert in England who called in moments ago, and he wants to know what the most spectacular thing you have seen so far on this mission is. Might be something in your space lab, might be something out the window. You can. How about it, Roger Crouch? Could you take this, the most spectacular thing you have seen so far on this mission?
We've got a bunch of people offering up opportunities. I'll go first. I think the most spectacular thing I've seen on this mission compared to my previous flights are dust storms. There's a tremendous amount of dust blowing off the African continent right now, and it's headed toward the west, toward North and South America. And to be able to see those plumes of dust reach out those thousands of miles and know that it's actually what's happening in Africa is right now impacting the weather in Atlanta and all across the United States. It's an interesting and a privileged vantage point for us to be able to see that happening.
No kidding, Jim. And we have a lot of viewers in Africa who are probably watching this and looking out the window and saying they can see our dust storm too. Pretty fascinating.
John, we get a lot of questions from literally everywhere around the world, and we had one that came from Holland, as you can see there.
All right. Okay. This is a good question. Let me ask Susan Still this question, if I may. How do you prepare yourself psychologically and physically for a trip into space?
Well, John, the psychological part comes naturally for me. I mean, I was flying fighter jets in the Navy before this, and I've been on and off of aircraft carriers, and so it's kind of natural for me to take this step into space. As far as physically, all the astronauts try and stay physically fit before they go into the mission because they're not going to get any more physically fit once they're up here. And we do ride the bicycle every day up here to keep our cardiovascular system working fine so that once we get on the ground, it won't be quite so hard to readapt to 1G.
Yeah, all right. Riz, I think we got another question.
Another one yet from the United Kingdom?
Oh, this is from Neville Kidger. All right, folks, this is from a viewer who... tell me who's doing the most work on the fire experiments, the fire in space. This is a question specific to that. You can just pass the microphone over to the fire in space expert. And the question is, why are your experiments on fire in the combustion module so important during this mission? And what applications can these experiments have for those of us who probably will never get to fly in space, but who have a lot of experience with fire down here on Earth?
Well, you know, combustion is a very, very important part of our economy. Hundreds of billions of dollars a year are spent on energy, 90% of which comes from combustion. It's also a very important part of our foreign trade deficit. So if we can move the body of knowledge of combustion science forward, that can have broad ramifications in all areas of applied combustion science. Automobiles, jet aircraft, power plants, all kinds of things that use combustion. And so the experiments we're trying to do up here, and they're very successful as well, is to try and move the fundamental knowledge of combustion forward.
All right. Let's see. Janice, you want to add anything to that as payload commander and an expert on all these experiments? I'd like to ask you, Janice Voss, what the most interesting of all these experiments in the Space Lab, which one is at the top of your list?
Well, that's not a very fair question to ask because, of course, they're all special, and that's really true. On the first day we did the laminar soot, one of the combustion experiments, and it was so cool. We had Roger and Greg and Tim and me, all three of us hanging at all different angles, watch this experiment go by, and that was great on our my second flight day, flight day 3. We had the droplet combustion experiment, and the first 2 drops got flung off as they were trying some different techniques, and the third one was a beautiful burn, and that was exciting on that day. And I can't wait to see what great experiments we're going to run today.
John, I'm going to bring back in Donna Shirley, who's the Pathfinder project manager. She's joining us from Pasadena, California. And Donna, I know you can't speak directly to the astronauts, but John can relay your question to them. Do you have another brief question for them up in space there?
Just that I wanted to tell them that we're working on getting them the information so that they can go to Mars.
Well, they're working on information at NASA there so they can go to Mars. You might want to pass that on.
That's right. Okay. They said in answer to your question about everybody wanting to go to Mars, astronaut colleagues, they're working on it at JPL. They're trying to pave the way for you. So that's probably pretty good news on this American Independence Day. Another quick question. This is for Jim Hulsell, I think. Jim, in a pre-flight briefing, you said that the fact that your first mission was cut so short and the fact that you got to spend a couple of months back here on Earth allowed the scientists who prepared all these experiments to make some modifications and improvements and make them even better this time. Oliver Kloss in Germany wants to know what sorts of improvements have been made to the experiments.
Well, I better pass that off to one of our payload experts here. Let me pass it off to Don. We basically modified some of the parameters based on what we learned the first go-around on Tempest, one of our electromagnetic levitation furnaces that comes from Germany and the German Space Agency. We've modified the parameters that we use to levitate our samples. We're using the same materials, the same metals to process, but we've changed the parameters slightly based on what we learned on STS-83.
Okay, this question for Roger Crouch, I think. A viewer, Christopher in Brazil, wants to know, Roger, if it is difficult for a regular person to become an astronaut. I know a lot about your background, and you're a brilliant scientist and all that, but in real life you're a regular person, and there you are sitting on the space shuttle. How tough was it for you to get to the point where you could take your second trip of a lifetime in 4 months?
Well, it's pretty easy to get up here once you get selected. It's the getting selected part that takes a lot of luck and a lot of hard work and a lot of patience, I think. As far as being on orbit, the first day or two takes a little bit of adjustment, and then after that, it's just the most wonderful feeling you can imagine, even for an average Joe like me.
Roger, before you pass the microphone, I got to ask you about the space sickness thing. Everybody talks about it. What does it feel like to get space sick? I mean, are you throwing up, or you just have headaches, or what happened to you on your first flight, and was it any different on your second flight?
Well, a lot of different people have a lot of different symptoms, and normally it's not the actual nausea that gets you. It's sort of a feeling that the first time I was up here, I felt like a balloon that was being pulled down underwater, and sort of like the top part of me had more pressure on it than the rest of my body, and that was kind of a strange feeling. You have a sort of a feeling of fullness, like if you lay down after you eat for the first day or two. The adaptation between the first mission and this mission has been really incredible for me, because this one was so much easier than the first time.
Well, I'm glad everybody's surviving. Anybody else have any bad trouble with adaptation syndrome, as the NASA speak is, or did most of you guys just kind of zoom through this?
Yeah, I think the real data point on this whole flight is if you let a crew fly 3 months apart, the second time around the adaptation is very quick, almost painless, I would call it. And I think that'll be a medical point of interest for all the doctors back home, because they've never really had this number of people refly this quickly before, and I know they're going to be interested in that. My interest now will be on landing to see if what held true on coming into orbit also holds true on landing. That is, our readaptation to 1G is just as quick.
Yeah. So, Jim, if NASA said, we'll let you guys go back up in October, same crew, and refly these experiments, you and your crew would have no problem with that, right? I see a lot of shaking heads. All right. We've had a lot of questions faxed to us, Riz.
Yes. Well, actually, John, I was wondering about the workload up on this trip for them.
That's right. Your guys are working 24 hours a day. How hard is the work? We're just pleased you got a few minutes to share with us. But, I mean, when you're not sitting around, floating around doing TV interviews, how busy is your workload? Yeah, Janice, you're the commander.
Very hard on the
Go ahead. Sorry.
We work very hard on the ground to try to maximize the amount of science without overworking the crew, so you don't get tired people that will make mistakes. They very carefully plan the mission both for power levels and crew time to try to keep a pretty constant level of work, and they've been doing a superb job. I would say they hit it just almost exactly right. We're working pretty continuously on the entire spectrum of experiments, and the handovers come at good times where we can break and not have any crew-operated experiments going on, and yet we're getting all the science done. So I would say the workload is just about perfect.
All right, we've got less than a minute of satellite time left. It is Independence Day in the United States, and this interview is being broadcast live to every country but the United States, but it'll be broadcast to the United States on tape a little later. Any words for the people of the world or your home country as you float around 160 miles above us?
Well, certainly we're celebrating a very special day up here, as everybody in the United States is, and that is the 4th of July, and we feel very privileged to have the opportunity to celebrate that very important holiday up here in space. And we'd like to point out that there are a lot of Americans all over the world, I'm sure many watching this broadcast right now, serving their country in a number of different ways, from the military service to the foreign service to businesses spread far and wide across this world. And I think I'd like to, in real time, repeat something that we tried yesterday. Okay, I see some nods here. On behalf of all Americans everywhere. Happy birthday, America!
Excellent, excellent. Crew of Columbia, thank you very much. We were just so excited to see all of you, instead of just a couple that we'd been told we'd get. Thank you very much for taking time out of your day. We're thinking about you here, and I'm trying to keep the folks on the ground as up-to-date as I can amidst the other space stories about how successful your experiments and your mission has been so far. We'll see you when you get back about the 17th, I guess. Happy flight, safe time up there.
John, and thanks to you very much for putting our viewer questions from around the world.
And our viewers. Our viewers have much better questions than I do. Thank all of you for checking in with these excellent questions.
John, thanks to you as well for joining us here on Q&A. A first for us, getting questions from around the world to out of this world. That was great. We haven't finished our subject yet. We've got the Mars Pathfinder project to discuss a little more after this short break, so stay with us.